Welcome to the Texas Values Report. This is Jonathan Saenz, president of Texas Values. Great to be with you on another glorious week in the state of Texas. They say all the time, I like to say it daily, everything's bigger in Texas. And let me tell you what, there's a committee hearing tomorrow in Senate State Affairs where that title and description is certainly accurate. Senate Bill 240 is going to be heard tomorrow in the Senate State Affairs. That committee is chaired by our good friend Senator Brian Hughes. This is a bill, Senate Bill 240 by Senator Mays Middleton. This is the Women's Privacy Act. This is taking that next step, not just about protecting sports, so men are not competing against women in sports, but they're also not undressing in their locker rooms, showers, and bathrooms. And this isn't just in limited circumstances. This is in any government building in the state of Texas, because we know that's where these things can happen in so many different places. It's been happening at the Capitol. Right? Men have been going into the women's bathroom, really, just kind of mocking people or acting like they're not doing anything wrong, daring people to say something as if it's not a big deal. It is a big deal. We had it happen to one of our staff members, Megan Benton, one of the newest members of our team. There's a staffer from Representative Andy Hopper who was in the women's bathroom, and a man was in there and startled her. We're going to put an end to all this. Senate Bill 240 is being heard in the Senate State Affairs Committee tomorrow, and it's going to be one of the most important hearings for one of the most important bills in this legislative session, and we're halfway through. All right, so we got a great guest today to talk about this. This bill is in the Senate tomorrow, but there's a bill just like it over in the House, House Bill 239, or did I get those backwards? No, that's right. House Bill 239 in the House, Senate Bill 240 over in the Senate. Representative Valoree Swanson is carrying that bill over in the House, identical bills, versions. And this is an issue that she's cared about a lot. She obviously led, if you're not aware, the effort to protect girls in sports and the women's in sports the past two different sessions. She's in her fifth session, starting out getting elected in 2016, and then her first session in 2017 from the northwest part of the greater Houston area. Representative Swanson, welcome to the Texas Values Report.
Thank you, Jonathan, and hello to all your audience.
Well, we're excited to have you back on such an important day. The hearing's tomorrow. I think we're going to be at the Capitol at like 7:15 tomorrow, bright and early. The hearing starts at 9 over in the Senate. And you got to be prepared. We're going to have hundreds of people there. People are getting our email alerts. We're going to have food, drinks, all kinds of backup and support. We're going to make sure people are comfortable because we're going to turn out an incredible number of people on this very important piece of legislation. I know, and at some point, that bill's going to head over to the House, and that's where Valoree Swanson's going to take over, but it's not as if she's just sitting there waiting. Okay, you've been doing a lot of great work. You said 80 plus 1, so that's more than the 75 needed, or 76, if you will. The majority needed to pass the bill, the women's privacy issue and bill over in the House. I think you got a Democrat too, Sergio Munoz. It's a bipartisan bill.
Absolutely, and we may pick up a few more Democrat votes actually on the floor, but it's very exciting. I think the few Republicans that have not signed on, I believe, will vote for it. So it has strong support. It's just a matter of getting the bill to the floor.
Well, go ahead. Sorry, I interrupted you.
Well, all of these men who keep coming in the restrooms here in the Capitol actually help us because people realize it really is a problem and we have to do something about it. And Representative Carrie Isaac had one of her staffers in the restroom. And over the years, this happens a lot. And when we call Capitol DPS, they tell us there's nothing they can do because there is no law that says which bathroom anyone has to use. Anyone can go in any bathroom, and they don't even have to claim, like the man doesn't have to claim to be a woman. He doesn't have to be dressed like a woman. Literally anyone can pick either one. So just in the last maybe 2 weeks, the State Preservation Board, which is appointed by the governor and I think the lieutenant governor and the speaker, and is over the Capitol and other state properties up here, did set a rule that you have to use in multi-use restrooms. People must use one according to their biological sex, but we're still having incidences. And when they call DPS, then DPS is saying it's still not against the law. And so they report it to State Preservation Board, and we don't know whether they're going to take any steps or not. So we need a law and not just a rule by a State Preservation Board. But we need to protect the girls, the women in all of our restrooms, all of the showers, any locker rooms, prisons,
Oh yeah.
juvenile facilities, domestic
Well,
facility.
you had a bill on that. You have a bill on the situation in the juvenile justice system that had a hearing in the House a couple of weeks ago.
Yes. And if we can get the Texas Women's Privacy Act passed, then we don't need that bill. We don't need another bill that I have that says that it's about the adult prisons. But not knowing for sure whether the big bill will pass, we decided to go ahead and file some of these smaller bills that we had from last time and couldn't get passed. So it was quite an interesting hearing. And the number of people who were saying they were the opposite of what their obvious sex was. And, you had a woman dressed as a man, said she'd been taking testosterone for years. So she had a beard, and people may have seen it. It went viral. She asked Representative Wes Verdell, a great new conservative who happens to be on that subcommittee, this woman portraying herself as a man, asked the representative, what is male genitalia? And it was actually quite funny because he's kind of a good old basic country boy, and he said balls. And so that's the transgender.
Oh, this is where we are, Representative Swanson, that we've got to talk about these issues. I mean, some of this is medical, biological, but and you know what? The other side is forcing us to talk about these things because they want to normalize it. They want to act like it's not that big of a deal, and that everyone is sort of desensitized to these type of things, and it's not right. And this is one of the ways that we get a handle on it, because you're right. It's happening to staffers at the Capitol. I mean, sadly, if it's happening at the Capitol, it's happening in other government buildings. And this is what really bothers me and concerns me, that because of this issue over the past, 4, 6, 5, 10 years, most people, if they see a man go into a women's bathroom, instead of thinking, I need to do something about that and tell someone and enforce the law or protect that young lady that's in there, instead they're like, oh, maybe I shouldn't say anything because I might get in trouble for reporting someone, instead of following the instinct, which is let's protect our women and girls and children in these vulnerable circumstances. But that is the reality, sadly. In many circumstances, that's where we are. That's why passing a law would be so important. So someone could say it's not just their judgment. The law says you can't do it. I've got a right to enforce it. So does the government. And that's what we're going to do with Senate Bill 240 tomorrow. We're going to have some great people. Speaking of people that have had this issue happen to them, there's a Texas volleyball player who's a collegiate athlete at San Jose State University, but is from North Texas, Brooke Slusher. She's going to come testify with her mother, Kim. I saw them testify in a court hearing where the state of Texas, through Attorney General Paxton, is suing the NCAA. This was in Lubbock a couple of weeks ago. Brooke is sensational, and she's also courageous because she talked about for close to a year, she was sharing a dorm room or an apartment and a bathroom with one of her fellow athletes who other people knew this was a male athlete, and he was deliberately doing things to make it difficult for people to not realize it. And eventually she did stumble on it. I'll talk a little bit about that. You got to listen to her testimony tomorrow about how. But this is not right, what's happening to young women. And some of these men, I mean, many of them, if not all, they know what they're doing. They know that they're concealing things and causing harm to these young ladies. So I'm glad we've got this legislation. But you've been through some of these issues before, Representative Swanson, passing the Save Women Sports Bill, passing the Save Girls Sports Bill. Those were very difficult, where young ladies had to come talk about issues that are very sensitive. They had to face scrutiny. But over time, I think, women and the public in general is getting a lot more confident about this, which is a good thing.
It absolutely is. The radical transgender agenda has gone too far, and now people are very aware of it, and they are pushing back, and it is making it easier to pass bills to protect people because there's an outcry for it. People want this to be fixed.
Yeah, well, and look, I'm not one to say a law is the solution to everything, but it can go a long way. All right, in law school, I was taught the law is a teacher. Many people will base their behavior based on what the law says is legal and is not. So that's why it's so important to get this legislation passed, and particularly during the session. I mean, we don't get it done now. We got to wait 2 years, right? A lot of things are aligned. We know this is a growing problem, and it's, I was out in Odessa on this issue, Carroll ISD, Keller ISD, Cy-Fair. You got places like San Antonio that are trying to do the other thing, right? They're putting tampons in men's bathrooms. I mean, it's just ridiculous what's going on. But all of this, to your point, is an agenda to try to, act like there's not really a difference between men and women. And, girls should get over being scared because some man comes into their bathroom. But I think we're moving in a great direction. Governor Abbott supports it, right? We got his support. Yeah. And when I saw him at the mansion at an event a week and a half ago, he wants to meet Brooke Slusser. We're going to try to get that meeting together. So it's, we got the lieutenant governor and a lot of different people that are ready to get this done. But we got to make sure we have time in the House. How are you feeling about things over there? I hear rumors the Democrats are going to try to walk out at some point. But, there's been a couple of hearings, but I still think, we got a school choice vote coming up soon in Public Education Committee with Brad Buckley. But I do think, people are starting to get a little antsy about the movement over there.
It is frustrating. I do want to make sure people realize that even all this time that we were not voting on the floor, individual members are working hard.
Yep.
And committees, once we got them, were working hard.
You've been rocking it. I mean, to get all those co-authors on your bill has been incredible.
Well, people say that no one works their bills harder in the House than I do, and it doesn't guarantee they get to the floor, but I don't want it to be because I didn't work them hard.
Well, Todd Hunter, chairman of Calendars, told us, we had a meeting with him 2 or 3 weeks ago. He said, you can tell people that I'm good with the bill. That's going to get done. And as soon as it passes out of Calendars, he'll sign on as a co-author. I'm like, let's go. A lot of good encouragement. And I haven't spoken to Speaker Burrows directly about this issue, but his voting record's been pretty solid on these issues in the past. I would imagine this is something that he would be supportive of as well.
Certainly personally supportive, and I'm hoping that it's on his agenda to make sure that we get it done.
Yeah, well, and look, there's plenty of time. You and I know that it doesn't take a long time for bills to go through this process, but you want to be careful, right? You want to make sure people know that this needs to be one of the first bills, because you start to get into April and obviously May, time starts to run out, and then the clock starts working against you. It's not really about whether you've got enough support for your bill. There's people, the Dems and others, that'll find ways to sort of run out the clock. So we got to be mindful of that. Riley Gaines will not be here tomorrow, but she did tell me she's going to come in another time. We're going to give her a little bit more advance notice, and I know she's going to be strong and protective of this issue. But, with the new members that have come into the House, I think we've seen a lot more support grow on these type of issues, right? We're talking about Senate Bill 240. There's this hearing tomorrow in Senate State Affairs. This protects women's and girls' privacies in bathroom, showers, and locker rooms, so men are not going in there and harming them or startling them. And, we make it clear there's some lines that are going to be drawn on these issues. That bill is being carried by Senator Mays Middleton, but in the House, Valoree Swanson, Representative Swanson, has the identical version of that bill. I think with seeing like cities and school districts being active in this, and now that the Biden administration is out of the way, right, the Trump administration is with us on that issue, I think that creates an even stronger playing field, if you will, for us to have success on this issue.
I definitely agree. And people realize that commercial that
the
President
cruise
Trump on the whole transgender issue, and said Kamala Harris was for they, them, but he said, I'm for you. That made a huge influence over the results of the election.
No, you're absolutely right. There was that other one that Cruz had where it depicted Colin Allred, who is a former football player, professional football player, but in a jersey, tackling a girl in a sports situation. Brooke Slusser, gosh, I'm looking forward to her testimony tomorrow because it's going to be so important. But it was heartbreaking to hear her in the courtroom in Lubbock 2 weeks ago talk about how this all played out, how the guy that's playing on that women's team, volleyball, I think his name's Blair Fleming, was deliberately concealing his identity. And, to your point about the genitalia you mentioned earlier, he was using what's called a tuck kit, where it works in a way to disguise, that private area part of the male body in between their legs, so people are not, seeing that and thinking, oh, maybe that's a guy, right? And this is a deliberate effort on the part of a lot of these people. And look, you think about the sports, but you have to be in touch. People have to understand, women are undressing all the time in sports settings. I mean, that's always a little uncomfortable to begin with, let alone all of a sudden finding out there's been a guy that's looking at you or could be or is right next to you, for quite a bit of time. And, if we're not on guard about those things, I think it also puts in a situation where people are more likely to get harmed by someone who's not just in there to pee, right? The other side's trying to make a light of this issue and saying that's all they want to do in there. Well, look, there's a men's restroom and there's a women's restroom. So if that's all you're going to do, then go in the men's restroom and get out. But they're making excuses because they know, to your point, on the ads, the campaign, the trend is the American public has moved in the direction and said, this has gone too far. We need to get back to common sense. And, Democrats are getting on this bill, or at least one, I think others will, because they realize that their voters see this as a very simple issue and really clear. But we're going to see what happens. Senate Bill 240's get that hearing tomorrow in Senate State Affairs. Valoree Swanson has House Bill 239 with up to 80 supporters or authors of the bill, which is more than is needed, 76, to get past that 75 vote threshold of simple majority. But we got time to do it. We're gonna help y'all out over there. Push that bill from the Senate to the House, and we're gonna have a good bit of momentum once we get over there, I'm thinking.
I think so too, and we owe a lot of that to Texas values. So thank you, Jonathan.
Well, we appreciate it. Mary Elizabeth and Jonathan Covey and Megan Benton, many of our teams are working at it, but we couldn't do that without the courage of state lawmakers like yourself that get these bills filed and put them in a position for success. So we're going to be on the ground in the Capitol tomorrow with a lot of updates on this hearing, so watch for those. But we are so grateful that we had Representative Valoree Swanson as our guest today on the Texas Values Report. Thanks, Representative Swanson.
Thank you.
Okay, I just got a couple of minutes left, maybe a few more than a couple. This hearing tomorrow is going to be huge. And I'm telling y'all, this is the most important bill at the most important hearing tomorrow. And primarily, it's about the legislation. This is Senate Bill 240, the Women's Privacy Bill, which protects women from having men go into their restrooms, showers, and locker rooms. And we're going to have something statewide. This isn't just in a limited setting or one part of the state. The entire state, 254 counties, 1,200 school districts, 1,500 cities. Somebody asked me about that earlier. Does this apply to public schools? You better believe it does, right? We're hoping to get somebody down from Carroll ISD. By the way, we have somebody who works for us that is on the Carroll ISD board, Andrew Yeager. He's up there helping raise money for us. So I don't know. He might be coming down, or maybe Cam will from that school board. But this is all these levels of government, right? Enough, okay? We're not tiptoeing around this. We're not piecemealing. We're not playing whack-a-mole. We've got to have state consistency on this issue. So no matter where you are and what's going on in that particular part of the state, when you walk into a bathroom, shower, a locker room, and you're a woman or you're a young girl, you don't have to worry that a man is going to walk in behind you or is already in there. If you're a dad like me of a daughter, right, or a teenage daughter, whatever, age she is, when you go public places where there's a lot of people, right, ball games and other things that could be government property, you don't have to, stay close to the restroom as I do, watching who's coming in and out because of the ways people are these days. They think it's a big deal. It's almost a joke to them, for a man to go into the women's restroom. It's not to me, and my daughter gets very concerned about those things. She's had to deal with that in some athletic settings where, we're not sure if people were following some of these rules. And so it's not something to be taken lightly. And I'm going to speak to the men out there, okay? There's a lot of focus on women coming, women athletes, moms, and all that good stuff, and rightly so. But men, where are you, okay? And I know many of y'all have stepped up, but if you haven't, we need you, okay? Come to this hearing tomorrow. The Senate hearing starts at 9 a.m. It's very easy. Okay, we'll show you how to get signed up. There's a little tablet right outside the Senate chamber. You can sign up. They're not going to ask you a lot of hard questions. I mean, don't worry about some of those things. Come, testify, say who you are, where you're from, and why this issue is important, and that you support Senate Bill 240. Right? We'll take care of the rest. We're going to have food, drinks, all kinds of stuff. But men, where are you? Let your daughters know, your mothers, let them know you're a natural protector as a man. Right? And, there are natural differences between men and women. I'm learning more about it as I'm raising a daughter, right? I've had other, women in my life that are at different ages, but I've only had one daughter, right? So to see her go through these different phases in life, I'm, fine to admit I've learned a whole lot more about, young ladies and what it is like for them, and how things are different, but also their hope and expectation, that dad's going to look out for them and he's going to protect them, or, if you're married, your wife is thinking about that you're going to protect them, or sometimes I took my mother to the inauguration in DC, right? And so I know, and so did my sons too, right? They know, okay, we're looking out for Nana and I'm looking out for my mother, right? Men, you are a part of this equation and probably, just as important as women, right? Don't shortchange yourself on this. And sometimes that's been missing, right? Some of these male coaches, good grief. What an absolute embarrassment that they're forcing some of these women to continue to compete in these settings where they have men competing against them and they're not standing up for their female athletes, right? And they're letting them go out there and sort of fight this battle on their own. Where would we be on this issue if a 22-year-old blonde swimmer from Kentucky didn't stand up and say, I've had enough, right? And I'm not saying her dad would not have gotten involved, but it was, there were men like me, but a lot of the attention in this thing changed when women athletes themselves were saying, my coach isn't standing up for me, some of the other people around me that are in authority, are threatening people to lose their scholarships. They, the chairman of the NCAA, right? We confronted him. Riley Gaines did, in San Antonio a couple of years ago, and they said, you know what? I'm going to have to fight for myself then. And Riley's done a fantastic job. We're so encouraged to be friends with her and have her a part of what we do. But that's allowed other women to come forward. Macy Petty, Peyton McNabb, who was at the speech, the State of the Union speech by President Trump 2 or 3 weeks ago. Our good friend Macy Petty over at Concerned Women for America. And, just a countless number of women now that are becoming household names. Brooke Slusser, she's going to become a household name, all right? Claire, the staff member from here in the Capitol who had a man come into her restroom or was there when she went in there, she's going to become a household name. These people are going to be seen as leaders for stepping forward and having the courage to do it. And hopefully we don't have to keep fighting this battle, right? The NCAA taking no responsibility, right? I don't know how more embarrassed they could have been for themselves to be in court 2 weeks ago in Lubbock and continue to point fingers at everybody else. This is their league. This is their events that they're putting on. Their name is all over it. And they're trying to act like, well, the scholarship came from the university and, the student made a decision to go into this, particular dorm, right? Continuing to try to act like we didn't have anything to do with it and then minimizing it. Oh, there's only just a couple of athletes where that's happened, where they've competed in women's sports. We know that's not true, okay? You're not fooling anybody, NCAA. They tried that 3 or 4 years ago, and, it was probably harder for women to come forward. So we knew that a lot of the reporting wasn't accurate. But that has changed, right? And so everyone, certainly is awake, if you will, on this issue, and they know what's going on. So the next step is let's pass the law. We only can do this for the next month and a half or two, right? And then we got to wait 2 years for the legislature to come back in session. The things that are aligned right now, right? I was at a ceremony at the White House Executive Building right next to the White House on Monday. Okay, my good friend Aaron Wrights, who was the chief of staff for Senator Ted Cruz and then was in a very high-level position before that with Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton, he got sworn in as the head of Office of Legal Policy for the Department of Justice. Who swore him in? Our U.S. Attorney General, Pam Bondi. I got to meet her, spend some time with her. By the way, she said she knew me, just so you know. Like, I am recognizable sometimes if y'all think I'm doing a good job. That was really nice of her. It was a nice moment. She was very personable, easy to approach, doing a great job. But from the top down, President Trump, the Department of Justice, all of these people are right in line and are in sync with what we're trying to do. They agree, and not only agree, right? They want to see it happen soon. But we got to do the work at the state level. We can't just sit back and wait for the DOJ and these other people to get involved and do something. But we don't have to worry about the Biden Department of Justice, making things complicated on these issues. Everything's lined up, all right? So, but we got to do our job. And I'm going to tell you, we've got a lot of support in the Senate. I know the votes are there, but we got to put on a good show, okay? And I don't mean that in a flippant way. People need to see hundreds of people there tomorrow on our side, right? You always have to continue every step of the way in the legislative process to show that the support is strong and robust, Okay, and I know sometimes it's harder for our people to get to these hearings because a lot of our people don't live in Austin, and they're raising families. They can't just turn on a dime and come to Austin. Bring your kids with you. Okay, I'm going to try to see if I can get my daughter there tomorrow. We need everyone to come. And if you ask, should I testify? Yes, you should. We need the committee to hear one after another, after another, after another. Because I'm going to guarantee you, okay, the other side is going to show up. And I don't want to see any stories written by people saying, well, the other side had more people. And I'm not saying that's going to be indicative of how this issue is going to go. But the support is on our side. Let's remind them of that by showing up tomorrow. 9 a.m., Senate State Affairs Committee starts. We'll get you signed up. We'll get you fed. We'll get some water for you. We'll make you comfortable. We'll do the rest. I just need you to show up, okay? The hearing starts at 9 a.m. Don't get here at 9. Try to get here before then. But if, listen, you're on your lunch break, you want to come over to the Capitol just to sign in, if you can't testify, have your name on the record, let's get that done too. We need hundreds of people over there, if not 1,000. All right, we need to make this case strong, clear, and we need them to know there's some urgency. We need to get this done now. It needs to be one of the first bills that gets this passed. And look, Governor Abbott's already saying he supports it. We get this to his desk. That's done. Okay? I'm super excited about that. So, Senate Bill 240, Women's Privacy Bill, Senate hearing in State Affairs tomorrow, 9 a.m. A lot of great information on our website, txvalues.org. Get there tomorrow. We're going to be there all day. Okay? This hearing is probably going to be all day and maybe a little bit of the night. So, just know that. So, there's a time and place for you to make a difference. Listen, if you see value in our work, please consider a tax-deductible donation. That's how we're able to do the work that we do for faith, family, and freedom. So go to our website, txvalues.org. Make that tax-deductible donation right now and help support our work. And we'll talk to you next week on the Texas Values Report.